Hey guys, it is Admin. Welcome to part 2 of the Swords Datapack Showcase. Part 1 just came out for me and it is already doing amazing. So thank you very much for your support on the previous video. If you've not already seen it, go check it out. There is an iCard in the top right. But again, thank you guys very much for your support. It is truly amazing. But since that came out, I actually made a couple small balance changes as well as a couple cosmetic changes to the Swords pack in general. So this video will also be covering the changes that I made in version 1.1. Let's get started by breaking down what 1.1 actually does. So you can give yourself all of the swords with the function wasd.sword:give items, or of course make them legitimately in the custom crafter. So the first change has to do with the experience sword. I increased the amount of experience it was giving from 2 to 5. So if I hit this cow, you will see I will get a fair amount of experience. 5 XP is what a zombie drops normally on death, so that is a fairly substantial buff. I think 5 is a pretty good balance, where 2 was clearly too little, but I needed to be less than infinite like I had in the video for Subs World. The next change is to the default settings of the datapack. If we run the function wasd.sword:settings, that will bring up the settings. You can see that the God Sword and the Magic Sword are both disabled by default. This is because I decided that they are just simply too overpowered to be in the pack by default. However, if you do want them, you can always run that function, or type /reload, click the settings button, and bring up this menu, and then enable them yourself. And finally, I made some changes to the Glass Sword and the Glowstone Sword, but as we have not shown off either of those, let's just jump right into the showcase. Let's start out with the Glass Sword. You can obtain it in the custom crafter pretty much exactly how you would expect. You take 2 pieces of glass and you add a stick to it. This gives us a glass sword. It does very little damage, but it can cause bleeding to mobs. However, the lower the sword's durability, the stronger the bleeding effect will be. So what does that actually mean? It means that the sword does 2 damage, but it can cause bleeding. So let's summon a cow and try it out. Okay, so we have a cow, and if I hit it, I will do 2 damage, but you'll see no bleeding. However, that's because I'm at full durability. As the glass begins to break, it will cause worse and worse cuts on our foes. Let's try this out with a husk. So, nothing. Oh, there, see, did you see it? It bled once. But as my weapon begins to get more and more damage, the bleeding will get worse for this guy. So he just died of bleeding. If we summon another one, you'll see my weapon now has 10 damage on it. So it will bleed for a short amount of time. But as we keep going, he'll take more and more bleeding damage. So essentially what we have is a weapon that deals a higher amount of damage to targets, the lower the durability is. Overall, I think it's a pretty good concept, and it makes a fairly decent weapon. Next up, we have the Piston Sword, and let's make this one pretty quick. So essentially, we just take a stick, we add a sticky piston and another piston. This is supposed to resemble a double piston extender, and then we get a sword that has knockback 3 on it, but it only does 3 damage. Not sure if this technically counts as a sword or not, but if we summon a husk, you can see when I hit it, it goes flying away. But I'm not actually dealing a whole lot of damage, but I am sending them flying. It's pretty fun. So this isn't exactly a weapon you're going to kill with, but it is one that you could use in all sorts of different situations when you need to knock something away. Next up is the Rainbow Sword. I really like this idea, and it was not featured in the Subs World video. To craft it, we need 2 rainbow diamonds. Do you get it? It's a pun. You craft those with a diamond surrounded by the rainbow. Then, to craft the Rainbow Diamond Sword, you simply take 2 rainbow diamonds, and you add a stick. This gives us a really nice looking sword that changes colors all the time. It's a cool animation, and it has the ability to steal the color essence from mobs. It's a diamond sword, but it has 1 less attack damage due to this extra utility. And in case you're curious, this sword was actually featured in Sub's World's Diamonds video. In that video, he showed off 7 different types of diamonds, and one was the rainbow diamond. I thought it was pretty cool, but I implemented it very differently. But yeah, that's where the texture comes from. Let's show what it actually does. So, summon a cow, and when I hit it, we get some rainbow particles, and it drops a random dye. So this time we got green, that time we got blue, or cyan. But you'll see when we hit it again, it's not going to keep dropping. It can only drop 1 dye per mob. Or as I said on the website, it drops 1 dye per die. Do you get it? 1 dye per die? It's funny. Well, maybe not. Back to being serious, I think this sword does add an interesting mechanic to the game, where you could turn your mob farm into a dye farm. Of course, the other option to make a dye farm in Minecraft is using bone meal, and so this adds an extra option. Moving right along, we have the firework sword. This sword is probably a really bad idea, but I thought it was quite funny. To craft it, we take 2 fireworks and add it to a stick. This gives us a really silly looking sword that only does 3 damage. However, if we hit a mob with it, a firework explosion will occur at that location. And it's randomized, so there are, I believe, 10 different firework explosions that can occur. It looks pretty cool in my opinion. However, you're probably noticing that I am also taking damage, so this sword is pretty impractical to use, as you will pretty much guaranteed kill yourself with it at some point in time. Even if you're hitting mobs at max distance, you'll still take generally 1 heart of damage. Like so. So I'd say that this sword is more of a joke item than anything, but I think the execution on it's pretty good, and it works nicely. Next, we have the 2 Nether swords. We have the Magma sword and the Glowstone sword. Let's just do them both at the same time. To craft a Magma sword, we simply take a stick and add 2 magma blocks to it. And to craft the Glowstone sword, it's pretty similar. Just take a stick and 2 glowstone blocks. Now that we've done that, we get a Magma sword, which does 5 damage, and a Glowstone sword, which deals 5.5. Both of them deal slightly less damage than iron, due to them being slightly cheaper than iron, as well as having special effects. So let's check those out. The Magma sword has a chance to light mobs on fire. It is not a 100% chance like a fire aspect enchantment would be. However, when they are lit on fire, the effect will deal more damage than that of fire aspect. It's essentially equivalent to fire aspect 3, which is not in the game. Of course, it's made out of magma blocks, which are extremely cheap to come by, and so the sword really should not be that powerful. Meanwhile, the Glowstone sword is a bit slow to swing, and when you hit mobs there's a nice little flash, and now they are glowing. They glow for 10 seconds, which allows you to see them through blocks. It works pretty much exactly like a spectral arrow would. However, unlike a spectral arrow where you're shooting at a mob from a distance, so maybe finding it might actually be difficult, for this sword you are meleeing them. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this enchantment really has any merit of use. I mean, I really cannot think of any way that it would actually be useful. However, I do really like the concept, as, I mean, it's just cool. And, I mean, to be fair, what else would a glowstone sword do besides making the mob glow? Next up on our list of swords is the magic sword. This sword is generally referred to as the master sword, but for Sub's video I kind of decided to make it an Easter egg, and so I didn't call it the master sword. This ended up being a mistake, as I made a bunch of people kind of angry. I saw at least like 50 comments that said, "That's not the magic sword, that's the master sword, what are you doing?" Now, I know a lot of people don't actually know this, but in the original Zelda games, it was referred to as the magic sword, not the master sword. And so this was really just meant to be an Easter egg, but let's look at what it does. Well, it is pretty much an exact port of the Master Sword that I had in Zelda Battle Arena. So if you've seen those, you'll probably know what it does. Essentially, if you are at full health, I can right-click and shoot magic projectiles. They will travel and hit mobs. You can only shoot them every couple seconds, but they do a decent amount of damage and are overall a pretty good projectile. You can also, of course, use this as a sword, and it is extremely powerful as a sword as well, doing 15 damage. Now, I realize I have not actually shown off the recipe, so let's check out that. To craft it, you need a stick, a nether star, and a diamond. However, as noted earlier, this recipe is actually disabled by default in the settings, so in order to enable it, you will need to go to the settings and enable the recipe. And of course, it is disabled by default because this is blatantly overpowered. Not only can it shoot projectiles that do a lot of damage, the sword itself is extremely powerful. Alright, and finally we have the God Sword. This sword is crafted like so. A stick and 2 nether stars. However, as pretty much everyone pointed out, this is far too cheap of a recipe, and I will definitely be adjusting it in the future to require a whole lot more nether stars. That being said, you get a sword that deals 50 damage. It is completely broken and overpowered, and really probably should not be in the game. It also has a very fast swing rate, and in general is pretty much the best sword in the game. There's really no way it could be improved. And if you're paying close attention, you'd notice it's also unbreakable. So this is probably actually the most boring sword that the pack adds, and again, if it wasn't clear, it's disabled for a reason. You can definitely play with it, but I would absolutely suggest that for your survival world, you do not enable this. And if you're running a server, no way would you want this enabled. At least without changing the recipe, because right now this would be completely broken, especially for player versus player combat. Those were the 16 swords added by the Swords Datapack. I hope you enjoyed their special abilities and unique attributes. However, this is not the end-all be-all list of swords that could be in the game. We already have a fair few ideas for other swords that we will very likely be adding in the future, but we do not have your idea. Let us know what your awesome idea is. Please make sure to list what special ability or trait it would have, and I will look into adding it to the game. Well, this has been Admin. That is all I have for this video, so make sure to hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss future updates for this project, as well as other data packs we have coming down the line. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Thanks for watching!